Hello. Today I'm going to talk about the Sethians, and this is my second video in my Gnostic Sects playlist. I'm going to be releasing about a video a month with the different Gnostic sects, so check back on that in the future. I'm not going to go into the entire Sethian cosmology. It would be too long of a video, so I'm going to steer clear of that. I'm going to touch on it a little bit. If you want to know more about it, just check out my playlist on Gnosticism. I talk about it in many different videos in detail. So who were the Sethians? They were a Gnostic sect at their height between the 2nd and 3rd century. They are named after Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve, believed to be the father of the spiritual race. They likely emerged in Jewish Christian circles in Alexandria or Syria. They have major influences from Platonism and Jewish mysticism and Christianity, but their origin is not known. We don't know that. Irenaeus mentions the Sethians alongside the Ophites in the 2nd century. Like all the heretic sects, he was antagonistic towards them. Him and some others I'll put on screen right here. Their core beliefs. Much of what we know as Gnosticism comes from them. They are the flagship of Gnostic thought. And the story is this. Before the world existed, the divine realm, the pleroma, was populated by perfect beings called aeons. One aeon, Sophia, created a flawed being, Yaldabaoth, without her counterpart, resulting in a blind, arrogant creator who believed he was the only god. He made the material world and lesser rulers called archons. The archons fashioned Adam, but he was lifeless until Sophia secretly implanted a divine spark in him. Then they created Eve, who was spiritually superior and awakened Adam by eating from the tree of knowledge. Guided by the serpent, a liberator in this version, not a deceiver, this flips the Genesis story. Eve and the serpent are heroes, and the creator God is the villain. The archons attempt to corrupt Eve and the divine seed through violent means, resulting in Cain and Abel, whose lineage is tainted by their interference. You can check out my tripartite division video if you want to know more about this. However, Seth is born from a pure spiritual union, unlike Cain and Abel. That was often said to involve a divine figure like autogenes or the Logos. Seth is uncorrupted, a child of light who inaugurates the spiritual seed of Seth, serving as a divine revealer and restorer of Gnosis, sometimes equated with the divine Christ in Sethian belief. They seemed like docetists, therefore the true Redeemer, whether called Seth, Christ, or autogenes, could not inhabit flesh without being defiled. They only seemed to have a physical body. So Sethians saw themselves as the divine seed, descended directly from the first spiritually whole figure, and they are destined to escape the material world. Like all of the Gnostic sects, salvation comes through gnosis, esoteric knowledge, not faith or works. So here's their claim. Unlike Valentinian Gnostics, who focus on Christ as the revealer, Sethians see Seth as the father of the spiritual race. Sometimes it's called the immovable race. So Seth is a divine redeemer, not just a biblical figure. The elect are his descendants, distinct from regular humans. It's an elitist cosmology that divides humanity into fixed metaphysical castes. They're not trying to save everyone. If you're not of the seed of Seth, you're basically collateral damage in a cosmic war. It's not about genes or race in a modern sense, but it's a theologically deterministic elitism. They are treated like pure bloodlines of souls. Everyone else is either ignorant, corrupted, or doomed. There's no way to cross over. Important texts from the Nag Hammadi library. 13 leather-bound codices were found. There were 52 different books. Roughly 33% of them are Sethian or Sethian influenced. Before this discovery, there were 0 Sethian texts that we know of, only hostile summaries by the Church Fathers. But here are some of the important texts. The Apocryphon of John, cosmic myth of creation, the demiurge, and salvation. It's the most foundational text. The Gospel of the Egyptians focuses on Seth as a savior figure. It's a core text, but quite esoteric. The trimorphic protonoia is a first-person speech of the divine voice of revelation. Protonoia means first thought. Zostrianos is a visionary ascent through heavenly realms, full of cosmic hierarchies, aeons, and emanations. Practices in Esoterica. They were not a church per se, as far as we can tell. I see it as more of a hermetic order or kind of a secret society focused on visionary experience, symbolic ritual, and cosmic knowledge. They likely had initiation rites, a kind of visionary meditation that they would do, a cosmological diagram of studies. These were ritualized, disciplined, visionary practices, probably involving prolonged fasting and isolation, chanting or invocation, especially of the names of the eons, study of cosmological diagrams or liturgical texts. Sethian texts are loaded with dense layers of mythic language. Barbelo, Calyptos, Proto-Phanes, the four luminaries, etc. It seems like a very heavily coded metaphysical system. I don't really think they were interested in literal worship. Their rituals were symbolic or kind of inner or spiritual. Hippolytus of Rome says this: they set forth endless genealogies of eons in names and reckon times, and invent a whole system of numbers and powers, being deceived themselves and deceiving others through false reasoning. Opponents and heresiologists. They were attacked by Irenaeus, Hippolytus, Epiphanius. The church fathers saw them as dangerously elitist and blasphemous. It seems like they eventually faded due to Christian orthodoxy and internal fragmentation and persecution. Irenaeus says this about them: they maintain that Cain derived his being from the power above, and acknowledge that Esau, Korah, the Sodomites, and all such persons are related to themselves. They declare that the women of their sect are to be free to engage in whatever they please, that being the redemption of the soul. Epiphanius says this about them: they say that Seth was the progenitor of their race, and they refer to themselves as the seed of Seth. They revile the God of the Jews and say that he is blind and foolish, that the serpent was wiser than all and gave true knowledge to Eve. Clement of Alexandria said this: these heretics boast of a certain unspeakable knowledge that they alone possess, and through which they claim to be saved, not by conduct, but by nature. Influence and legacy. Sethianism likely influenced later Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and modern occultism. It's a kind of prototype of radical dualism, matter versus spirit. Their ideas have been revived in modern Gnostic movements and esoteric circles, which is interesting because I don't know how they did this pre-discovery of the Nag Hammadi texts. Perhaps the most important group were the Knights of Seth, and they were a 19th century British-German Neo-Sethian group that attempted to resurrect medieval Gnostic and dualistic Christian ideas. While achieving a certain popularity among wealthy young Englishmen in the 1850s, the Knights never gained considerable influence and were by many considered a mere gentleman's club rather than a religious movement. The group presently seems to be extinct, but it was a neo-chivalric order. No original texts survive, only hostile paraphrases. There is no surviving membership list or correspondences that name individuals. They seem to have just disappeared. I find this very strange. And here's the question. We have letters, books, all kinds of documents about the Golden Dawn, but nothing from them. Why? They were only about 30 years earlier than the Golden Dawn. It seems to me they might have been erased. If you know any information about it, you can comment below and tell us about it. If you want to go deeper into Gnostic texts like the Apocryphon of John or the Hypostasis of the Archons, you can join my insider circle and get access to these. But that's all I got for this one. If you have anything to say about the Sethians, or if you think there's something I missed, you can include it below. But that's about it. Take care. Have a good day.